Hello and welcome. My name's Andrew from GP3D. Today I'm going to do a build video, but it's a kind of a special kit. This year is the first time that the Off-Road World Championships have been back in Australia since 1989. So those of you that are aware of that event in '89, it was the first time the World Championships for 1/10 off-road buggies was in Australia, and it was the third World Championships ever, in fact. So 85 Ranch, and then 87 Romsey, and then 89 was in St Ives track near Sydney in Australia. So it was a pretty epic event, and one that's sort of become quite famous in the RC world, and predominantly famous for especially Masami's sort of breakout wins. He'd already captured some World Championship titles before then in 4-drive off-road and 12th scale, and at 89 he cleaned up both classes, 2-drive and 4-drive open. And as some of you might have also seen, at GP3D here, I've created a replica of basically the 89 Masami car. So that's my replica there. Down here we can see a photo of the sort of famous photo of the grid, front row of the grid. So you got Steve Dunn with the Losi in second, and then Masami in the prototype associated in first. So yes, what I did a few years ago, before Vintage Bash 1, was to recreate a replica conversion kit for that buggy. So there's the kit itself, plus there's a whole range of additional parts that you can source from us and from elsewhere that make it up into a complete car. So today I'm going to go through a build video of our kit, and yeah, show how it goes together, and also show some of the extra bits that you can get from various aftermarket manufacturers that have created parts to make it a lot easier for us over the years, over the recent years. When I first started, there was really not much option parts available, so you had to find originals, gearbox, shocks, turnbuckles, a lot of the smaller bits such as the axles and bearings and other hardware. With the wing mounts, even bodies was hard to find. You had to find originals. But more recently, there's a whole range of companies that have created replica versions of a lot of the parts, or all of the parts that you need to finish it, which is super awesome. So you can build an entire car from brand new parts if desired, and you can mix and match with original parts. So we'll get into it now. So I'll switch over to my bench. So we can see here, got like the box. I'll do a bit of a pretend unboxing for you, and then firstly I'll just I'll put that over there. Firstly I'll show you my current Masami car. So this is the car I've been racing ever since the Vintage Bash 1, and it's the kit that we're about to go through and build. It has all the additional parts on it. Some of the parts are originals, like I've used original gearbox internals, and I've used original shocks on this one, and then a lot of the parts we've had made or are now available. So for Vintage Bash 4, we're going to recreate the entire grid from that 89 World Championship event. So 10 cars in the A final, and we're going to, the Bash team, along with some of our friends who have agreed to give their time and expertise and skills to build up some of the cars as well. We're going to create all 10 cars and have them raceable, so not just for display. They're going to be working. We'll have some of the modern electronics in it, batteries, servos, speedies, or not even the speedies. So the speedy and the motor combination we're going to use from Hobbywing. It'll be a brush motor, and we'll make it similar to the way the cars used to be back in the day. Maybe not quite as fast, but definitely enough speed to give the effect and look. So we're going to have probably at least 3 runs or 3 races during the Vintage Bash 4 later this year, and it'll be a pretty spectacular spectacle, I think. So all 10, all painted up, looking correct. We'll have all the same sort of tires and the 2.2-inch rims, which I'm not going to go into, but was a big controversy at this event, which instigated the control tire rules more recently. So they'll all look the part. They'll look amazing. They'll look like it did back then, and hopefully they drive around the track and look similar to to take you back to if it was '89 and you're watching the A final. So that's our plan. This is the first car. I just ran this again on the weekend, so it was pretty awesome fun. Nice, and handles nicely, a little bit of push, super easy to drive, and the main thing is it looks great on the track, which is what it's all about. So yeah, so that's the car there. I'll just pop the body off for you so you can have a quick look at what we're going to build, like what the finished item looks like. So you can see this one has modern electronics in it, so for the brushless stuff to make it easy to run on clubbies. But as I mentioned, we're going to have a brushed motor in the back for the bash demonstration events, and a speedy obviously to run the brush motor as well. So yeah, that's the car. I've got like double deck carbon fiber construction. All of the carbon fiber, the Replica water green fiberglass FRP shock towers, front and back, and yeah, this amazing chassis, which if I can get the right angle in there, maybe not. Oh, there we go. It's got the 30-degree kick up molded into the carbon, so it's all laid up in a big steel mold, and then all of the carbon and the fiberglass, of course, is cut by a great friend Paul over at Berserk RC. So I've done a lot of collaboration with him, and basically his skills in his business has made this kit and almost every kit that I've done possible, with all of his carbon and fiberglass CNC expertise, which has been absolutely amazing. So as all of you that have experienced his products would know, they're top, very top quality, the highest quality, and he does full customization services, which is pretty rare in this industry. So it's fantastic to be able to come up with an idea, sketch it out, and say, "Hey Paul, can you make this for us?" And he makes it come to life, so we can create cool replica cars like this one. So you can see this has got a whole bunch of option OG or option parts on it. Motor plates. We've got the shocks and the gearbox internals, of course. Turnbuckles. So we'll show you those. They're the Lunsford Replica turnbuckles with a 1/4-inch nut on them. It's all imperial threads to replicate the original. And we've got the ball cups. What else? All of the hardware, I've got that as an optional hardware bag. I've got some like pseudo replica steering bell cranks on this one, which give you a bit of the look of the originals, but they're a lot sort of tougher and more robust, so a bit more reliable for day-to-day club racing. Got the alloy standoffs there, so we'll go through all of those bits in the build. Yeah, so there it is. So that's the finished product. Now let's get stuck straight into the build. Cool. So I'll do a bit of a pretend unboxing, and you'll see we've got the instruction manual up for you. So it's just down below me here on the screen. So that's Grand Prix website. We've got the picture of my car that I just showed you here, and that's a CAD rendering of the of the model of what we're going to put together. And then, so if you go on my website, go to the manuals, and you can see here all the different kits that we've got. And we'll go down to the 89 Stealth and open up the manual for you. So obviously I'll probably be able to build one of these without the manual, but yeah, for you guys watching along, it'll be a good reference. And if you have or are planning to build one, then this will sort of guide you through the steps. So we've got all the intro, bit of a description about a lot of the plastic parts, which are all 3D printed by myself. You can see in the background we've got a couple going there. So the parts have some rough edges and some extra sort of flashing brims as part of the printing process, and some rough edges. So as we go through, I'll show you how to trim. You know, it sands really nicely. You can do some sanding of the parts if desired to make them really sort of polished and looking nice. It's optional. You don't sort of have to, but it's nice to make it look pretty good. Especially if you're going to display it on the shelf, you'd want it to be nice and slick and good edges to make it look a bit more like the original would have. And if you're going to run on the track, then it's up to you. But yeah, I always can't resist cleaning up the edges and sanding it a bit, because it does look so nice that way. Okay, so I'll just bring you down here. So we're prompted at the start of the steps there. Yeah, so let's do a bit of a pretend unboxing for you here. So we'll open it up. Okay. Cool. So I've got the kit as well as a whole range of the option parts here. Some of them are from us and some are from other companies. So you can see a lot of the fan RC items like ball cups, the gearbox, Stealth gearbox replica. Replicas of the Re style from Associated. Unfortunately, a little bit. It's not a replica of the original Stealth, so very similar. It does the same job, but the slipper and the slipper shaft is slightly different and longer. But yeah, other than that, it's pretty cool. I've got some CVDs there from Fan, as well as the shocks. So yeah, might build those later, but you guys all know how to build shocks, so we'll see. Might go through those quickly. We've got some ball studs from Dragon Punch RC here as well. So these are pretty hard to find originals now. So that's a very cool item that fit obviously perfectly with the ball cups. What else have we got here? We've got the retro Lunsford style replica of the turnbuckles. So these are created by Gaza Motorsport. So Gary Sturdy, a good friend up in Queensland. And yes, he hand makes these out of titanium rod. They've got imperial threads, so they match the ball cups, and just like the originals, of course. And reverse thread on the other end from the nut, so they're proper turnbuckles. With a 1/4" nut glued on. So side by side with the original Lunsford styles, I can't tell the difference between these, which is super cool. So I've got those. We've got a GP3D hinge pin kit, so titanium hinge pins, also made for us by Fan RC. Got some optional standoffs, a few other little bits that we'll need eventually. So some bearings, a little dust sort of pseudo replica dust protector. So it's printed out of some flexible plastic material to go in between the motor plate and the motor and the gearbox, motor plate and the gearbox. So yep, it's got those cool bits there. There's the pseudo replica steering bell cranks. So we'll install those as well. Cool. So got all those bits, all the extra goodies. And then the actual kit itself. Oh, sorry, a couple more goodies here. So I've got the Replica motor plate and motor guard. When I started doing these kits, these were super rare. Nobody made them. You had to find originals, which were extremely rare and expensive. So we've also got some replicas of these made by Gaza, which yeah, pretty amazing. All sort of hand rolled, hand bent. All the threads are threaded with imperial threads as well. Very cool. 2mm aluminium and anodized to a gold color that's pretty close to the original associated golds, although it did change over the years. So anything in the ballpark will always look the part. So that's pretty cool. We've got a Bulkhead gear cover. So pretty similar to the original style. So they're kind of cool. Look the part as well. And then we've got our actual the Masami RC10GX89 replica kit. So got the bags there that we'll go through in a minute. Missed that. Got some Yokomo style spring tensioners for the shocks. On Masami's car he used the Yokomo style spring tensioners. I think most of the other drivers, if not all of the other drivers, use the AE clamp style spring tensioners. But I like to use these because it looks the way that the Masami car did on the track. The photo shoot that AE did later on, I think they took these off and put the associated clamps back on. So you can go either way, and it always either way will look the part as well, of course. And then the bit of the crowning glory of the kit is the Berserk carbon and FRP set. So we've got the awesome big chassis, got the 30-degree kick-up built in, as I was saying before, and we've got the top deck. So it's a top deck construction, of course, with the standoffs, and then we've got the shock towers. So the water green FRP, very hard to get the right color to replicate the originals, but we managed to source a whole batch at great complication and expense. So we've got the perfect water green color fiberglass FRP for the front and rear towers. Yep, so that's our little unboxing. And let's just chuck all that in there for the moment. Let's get stuck into the build, huh? So I'll move that a little bit out of the way. Okay, so first up, so I've got the instructions there. So rear bulkhead, tower, attach it to the chassis. So that's our first steps. So got bag one. For the rear tower and suspension parts. I've got here. So I've got the arms, arm mounts, rear bulkhead, and also for later on, we'll probably put them aside for now, but I've got the sort of pseudo replica Yokomo TH1 wheel adapters to fit the Yokomo wheels. I've got the two screws, 2-bolt arrangement, and then the center large 8/32 nut for the middle. So that's those ones. And then I've got some other sort of replica rear uprights as well here. These are quite thin at the top, so not super robust for racing. They look exactly replica, but can be used for racing. But you know, a few big crashes, they tend to break through the top thin part. So I usually use a slightly beefed up version for racing for a bit of robustness. Cool. So I've got that. Let's crack open these beautiful carbon parts. There's the get a little sticker set from Mr. Berserk. Yeah, so there's the beautiful chassis. Yeah, very expensive item to have the mold, and it's very thick. It sort of replicates 1/8 inch thick carbon, so it's about 3.1 to 3.2 millimeters thick. With the kick up, you can see the angle there. Cool, very nice. Okay, got the top deck. Probably won't need the top deck for a little while, so I'll set that aside. And the towers. Let's grab these out. Cool. So rear tower, front one we'll set aside with the top deck. Once we get to the front end. Okay, so ball studs we need. So got Dragon Punch ball studs. So Dragon Punch have come on board with us for the Vintage Bash 4 as one of our sponsors. So that's pretty awesome. So I'll be catching up with him on one of the Bash live streams before the event. So let's crack these open. So we can see here we've got a couple of different lengths, I think. Let's just see what we've got. Got short and long. So you've got to be obviously specific where you put the different lengths. So I've got the 6 long ones and another 10 short ones. So most of the short ones we use for front bell cranks, steering bell cranks, and I think the front tower also needs the short ones. So we're going to put these into the tower. So that's the back of the tower, and we want to put it into the inner hole as shown in the manual. So what does it say? Use short ball studs for the inner camber link. So that's not the long ones. Put all those long ones over there, and keep a couple of these. So these actually have a 2 mil hex in them, which the originals didn't. So it makes it a little bit more convenient, but it's still got the imperial, the nut and imperial thread. So these you can pre-tap the holes with a 440 style bolt if desired, but I usually find it's not needed. This plastic, it's all the plastic in this kit is, all the white plastic is PC blend, so it's a polycarbonate plastic material from Prusa. Lots of companies make it, but I use the Prusa brand, and absolutely fortuitously they released it in not many colours. There's about 5 colours. One of them is this natural off-white sort of colour, which is extremely close to the original associated nylon colour, which has been absolutely fantastic for what I've been doing with these replica builds. So it's perfect. With all the plastic parts in general, first thing before you usually screw stuff to it, is you can just clean up the edges. You'll see this one's not too bad. Some of the little rough edges, like the underside edges from the printing process where it gets supported, are sometimes a bit rough or have sharp bits. So I usually clean them up with either a scalpel if it's quite a bit, so you can sort of trim the edges a bit if you want, like that. Take off any larger excess bits, and then sand it. So some parts don't take much sanding. Other parts, yeah, maybe a bit more, especially the arms. I usually spend a bit of time on them to make them look nice. You probably flatten off the bottom of this bulkhead, so it sits nice and flush and flat onto the chassis. A lot of these parts I print at a sort of a 45-degree angle to the horizontal, which does a few things. It usually distributes the strength across the component, rather than having part of it being really strong and part of it being a bit weak. It'll give you a medium strength through the whole component, so you have no excessive weak points. It also tends to give a more uniform and consistent finish, like the look of the side of the printing. It could look different if the part is printed flat or vertically on the bed. You'll get like the side surface and you'll get the top and bottom surfaces, whereas if you print it at sort of like a 45-degree angle to the bed, so like side on, it'll kind of look like that. You get the same sort of finish all around the component, and so it looks a bit nicer, a bit more consistent as well. So you'll probably see that in some of the parts where the sort of like the lower edges where they need to be supported during the printing will have the not as good looking section finish on it, where you need the sanding, and then the rest will have a nice uniform finish. Cool. So this bulkhead is kind of a replica of the original AE1, but it's a replica of the way that Masaki or the AE guys that built the cars cut them down. So the original AE part had sort of a box structure where the back of the old Nike batteries kind of could sit into, and for these prototype cars they were trimmed, so narrower, much narrower at the bottom section. I'll make it all the way around. Much narrower at the bottom section there, and cut off all the sort of the box section for the battery, which wasn't needed. So I assume it was to save weight, and also the narrowing it actually was required due to the geometry design of these cars back then. So they had much longer arms than the production kits at the time, with the inner hinge pin further in towards the gearbox. so they needed to clear the space on the tower as well for that. So a little tip here: usually just sand the bottom of the shock tower a fraction, because it's sometimes a bit of a tight squeeze for the top deck to slide under. The way that they'd modified, the production parts for this World Championships in '89, and converted it to a sort of carbon double deck chassis design. So the rear of the top deck sits on top of the bulkhead and then slides nicely under the bottom of this tower. So we'll screw that on. We need 440 by 7/16 and 5/16. The longer ones at the top, goes through more material. Show what's bottom. Oh yeah, I've got a tip here to sand off a little bit off the bottom edge of the tower, so it clears the top deck there. So the tools, most to build these with all of the Imperial hardware, the most common tools you'll need is the 3/32 driver and also a 1/16 driver. So they're the two hexes you'll need. There's not too much, but as we saw with the ball studs, sort of more modern replicas have the 2mm hex in the top of them. So we've got our 16th. So probably pop all four in, get them started, so everything lines up. Yes, all the threads, all of the holes in the plastic parts that get bolts threaded into them. So there's no thread in the printed parts design. It's just a hole, sized at the correct sort of diameter so that these threads will go in perfectly. And the first time you go through, it cuts its thread. You can, or in theory, you can obviously use a tap to cut the threads if desired, but I would actually recommend to not do that. I did try it early on, and I found that it made the thread a little bit loose. Not much, just a fraction on the loose side. So I found that using the actual bolt itself to cut the thread worked the best. And this plastic's actually very good. Some of the sort of more basic plastics that are used for decoration models, PLAs and PETGs and stuff, the threads will be okay the first time, but when you take it in and out a few times, it loosens them and wears them out very quickly. Whereas with this polycarbonate material, it doesn't. The threads will last extremely well, probably longer than the rest of the parts. So yeah, so nip them up, and of course never over tighten when you're threading into any plastic. Just sort of nip it so it's it's firm. It's just that last little bit of strength just to feel it where it's bottoming out, and then don't go any further. Cool. Bolt of the chassis, so I've got our 1/2" 8/32 bolts. Got my super old school Eagle Racing I think it's a JIS Japanese head on these Phillips, which I've had for almost as long as I've been racing. And yeah, it's just the perfect shape for a lot of these Phillips, old school Phillips bolts, especially the associated ones. Fits them perfectly, because these Phillips are a bit easier to strip if you're not careful. So always thread them slowly. Another little tip here is you can use the anti-wear grease. I use the Tamiya anti-wear grease. There's probably plenty of other types that work, and it helps lubricate as it cuts the thread for the first time, especially when it's into like a bigger thread like this, when it's into a plastic hole. Cool. So make sure you got the the chassis the right way, of course. Got all the countersunk holes on the bottom of the chassis. And you'll see original RC10s always had 4 holes across for the bulkhead, and the bulkheads utilised the outer holes in the production kits. I think they always did, or a lot of them had the sort of middle 2 holes as well for some reason, but in terms of this prototype Worlds car, they utilised those middle holes. Make sure the bulkhead and the tower is the right way around, so you got the tower facing forwards and the ball studs facing towards the back. We'll get both of these started. I made these holes a fraction under size, so they'll be quite firm to thread in the first time, which is where the grease helps. So just make sure you do it sort of slowly and carefully, and don't let the Phillips slip out of the head, which can damage the bolt. That's almost there. See, slip there. Okay, right in. Now, actually, at this point, little tip: I'll just back them off a fraction, because I've found the best way to sort of finish the double deck assembly is to have them a little bit loose, just so the bulkhead just can move a fraction, and that way we can position the top deck and all of the bolts holding it and tighten them down sort of together, so it aligns everything and doesn't twist or skew the sort of box structure of the top deck. Okay, so next we've got the battery compartments. Cool. So we'll find bag 2. I'll just set those other parts aside. Pop open bag 2. Cool, so you can see I've printed all of the battery compartments with little joining tabs or joining brim. So it's kind of like the equivalent of sprue, plastic parts on a sprue in a molded part. So we just need to chop all that apart. So it's a very thin layer of plastic, and it'll slice off really easily. And you can, once you slice it off, you can clean up the edges with sandpaper, etc. as desired. Cool. That's all those bits cleaned up. Okay, so we need some 440s. 4 of those. 1/16 driver. So these battery cups, so the original guys like Associated Guys and Masaki and that, cut down the standard production AE battery cups to, I guess, save a bit of weight, or make the clearance where they needed it in this car. And so I've replicated the cut down versions, so you don't have to cut them down yourself. They're sort of pre-replicated for what the originals look like, or the original prototype ones look like on the 89 Masami car. You can sand these edges if you need to. It's pretty good. You'll see there's a couple of smaller cut down pieces as well, which they use them as they act as a little body mount method. So they put some Velcro and on the sides, and Velcroed the side of the body to it. So you can see that in the finished one here. So you can see the white plastic part with a bit of Velcro there, and then the body you can just attach to that to hold it down. So this piece at the back, need to make sure you put it into the correct holes. So there's 2 sets of holes at the back and 2 at the front, so you can have I guess the shorter or longer configuration of the space for the battery, depending if you're going to use original NICADs or NIMS or something like that, or whether using a shorty, a LiPo shorty, or a full-length LiPo. So it's got those sort of options there, which is true to the original design and look of it anyway, with these extra holes, so it works out well. You can put these in the back, so not the backmost holes, which are slightly outboard, there for the standoffs, but you want to put it in the rear of the two battery cup holes, so it's kind of like the middle hole of those 3 if you count them all. Get them both started first, and then you screw them all up, and then right at the end just carefully nip it up, make sure it doesn't twist the battery cup, and same thing, nip it, don't over tighten, make sure the battery cup's sitting square so it's not like skewed left or right. So then if you put it in the back hole at the back, you can go in either the back or the front hole at the front. Let's see what I did for this one. So I put that in the long position. So it's so it's up to you. I've provided 2 of these battery sort of replica battery straps. I think they use styrene plastic back in the original. So I've printed these using just a basic PETG plastic to make it look similar to the white styrene, and they're nice and flexible and bendy, so you can bend them up to get the battery in, so it won't break. It'll bend a bit. Don't fold it over, but it'll allow you to access the battery removal. So so there's two versions of these. So if I line them up, you'll see there we go. You'll see one slightly longer than the other. So depending on where you put this front and or rear battery cup, determines whether you use the long or the short versions of these. So I'll actually put in the long version, because if you're using the shorty LiPos, it just gives a bit of extra flexibility about positioning the battery forward and aft if you're racing it. If it's for a display for the shelf, then you can pick the shorter position for the NICADs and make it the exact replica, if that's what you're going for. Cool. Again, especially with this one, make sure it's not twisted. Sometimes it's, once you've tightened it up and nipped it so it's tight, just back it off, a fraction, sort of probably 1/8 of a turn only, just so it can let itself sort of center and not twist. There we go. And then side pieces. Another little tip here, especially if it's for racing, is, which hole is it? So it's not the slightly offset hole at the back of the 4 on the outside. That's again, those 2 slightly offset ones are for the standoffs, but then you'll see there's 3 that are in line. So it's the rearmost one of those. What you can do is put a little bit of double-sided tape on the bottom surface of this, like very thin. Use TESA thin double-sided tape as an example, or whatever you've got. You can put a bit on there, and that stops this from sort of spinning and rotating. So that is an option. Let's do that. Why not? So I've got some of that TISA super thin. I think it's like 0.2 millimeter thick tape. So we can just see where these pieces go. So we can just line up a little bit like so. And on the other side. So it's tempting to line these up flush with the chassis, but you probably want to just angle them in towards the front a tiny amount, so it kind of lines up with the line of the body eventually, but it's just Velcro, so it's not critical. So you can see there I've angled the front of the plastic, sort of angling slightly inwards towards the center line of the chassis, sort of thing, from the overhead view. Too much. There you go. Looks good. There you go. Got the tip there for you. Double-sided tape. Nice. Okay. Cool. So now I've got these cool little standoffs. I don't know what they used. The originals were, I think, they look like the bulkhead of a 12-scale car or something along those lines, which is kind of weird. So they must have chopped them down or milled them down for making some kind of makeshift standoffs at the back here on this car. So these ones are printed. That come in the kit. There is some options from No Coast. I provided my design to the No Coast guys, and they very kindly got them created out of aluminium, so you can get those as well. Obviously it costs a lot more for the aluminium versions compared to just a bit of plastic, but they are aluminium and they look super cool. I need to make sure we use the right screws here. So 5/16. If the thread's too long, it would quite easily break them. So we've got those. If you do buy the metal ones, they come with the screws in the kit, in the set. So yeah, these are slightly more delicate parts. Same material, the plastic, the PC blend, but be super careful with these ones. Once it's all in and bolted up, it's a good strong box structure, but you just need to make sure you don't over tighten them, especially. Cool, just nipped up. Nice. Okay, so now we're on to the front. So I'll come back to those other white plastic parts later on. So now the front is bag 3. So I've got bag 3 here for the front suspension. Cool, so I've got the arms. I've got a cute little body post, which I think was originally was a chopped down on-road part, maybe, like from a RC10L or something along those lines, and I think they milled it or chopped it and made a little body post that goes on the top deck. It's got this cool little alloy part. That's the front hinge pin brace and the front bulkhead. So you see the printed bulkhead here has a large thin brim, it's called, and that's used to during the printing process to keep the whole part stuck and flat to the bed, the print bed, because this special material is PA jet. Some of the early ones I did with nylon, same sort of characteristics. It shrinks as it cools, so the printing process is quite involved, where the whole part's trying to sort of peel itself off the bed as it cools and shrinks. So you've got to hold it onto the bed. So it's like again like a flashing of a molded part equivalent, where you've got to trim it off. It's very thin, 0.2 mil, and you just trim it off with a scalpel and clean it up with sandpaper. You can sort of tear it off, or it's tempting to tear it off, unless it like kind of just cracks off. I try to avoid tearing it off, so don't fall into the temptation of tearing it, because it can sometimes tear off like the surface of the actual part itself, depending on what angle, which is not ideal. So yeah, I always try and like cut it, trim it off, and then sand it as desired to clean up all the edges. You'll get the technique after a little bit of practice. For those of you that have excellent scalpel skills, better than me, will have no problem. Nice. So that's cleaned up. So a big part of this kit is all the hinge pins. So all the components like the arms and the mounts and or the front bulkhead mount all have the hinge pins going through them for the arms. So you'll need to drill the holes. I always make the holes undersized in the printed part design, so that they can be drilled out, because that gives a much more accurate hole. Printing is pretty accurate, but not as accurate as a drill bit. So I always drill it out with a 1/8 drill bit, which we'll do next, and then use a 1/8 reamer if need be to just open out that little bit extra. Depending on the section of the parts, we need to sort of make it a sort of tight fit, like a press fit, so it doesn't move. And then the other aspect, like in the arm, would want it to be a free fit, so that it does rotate freely without being too excessive. We don't want to make the hole too big, of course, so you have excess play, which is not desirable if you're going to race the car. So yeah, so we want to just do that carefully. We'll show that, so you can sort of work your way up to the hole size to not make it too big. So you just do a little bit at a time and get to the point. Keep checking it. Get to the point where it's just the perfect free movement, so you're not binding the suspension, and then it's also not too loose, so don't go too far. So we'll grab our front shock tower and some 440 socket bolts. check these holes carefully, because they're mostly sized for a 440 thread fit, like the originals, but you don't want to force these bolts through. So I want a 7/64 drill bit, I think it is, which is about 2.8 mil. There's no way I'm going to be able to read the number on this. Let's measure it. Yeah, 275. So it's a bit under 3 mil. I've got a 1/8 drill bit here, which we'll use in a minute for the arms and the mounts. I find, yeah, we can drill out all the holes in this tower, because none of them are needed to be threaded. Just the bolt goes through and it gets secured on the other side with a nut or into plastic. So I'll be very close, so it won't take much to drill them out to about 2.7 something. Same with all the shock mounting spots. It'll make it a lot easier to get the shock bolts in later on. Which should allow them just to slide through. Let's double check. Yep, perfect. So it's just presses through. No excess play, but it presses through without threading. Let's do the rear tower shock bolts while we're about it. Make it easier for ourselves later on. Nice. Okay. So the bottom two holes are used to mount the tower to the bulkhead. So grab our larger 3/32, 3/32, probably can't see that, hex driver. So it goes into the outer holes in the bulkhead. The only ones that'll line up. So some of the holes you'll just need to give a little bit of push, a bit of pressure on the driver to get the thread started. And then once it catches, then you just thread it in as per normal. But yeah, sometimes that first thread, because the hole's undersized, that first thread is sometimes doesn't want to catch, so you just give it a bit more pressure for pushing into it. Cool. Again, just nip it so it's firm and nothing more. Okay, we're going to mount this. I'll just give you another little tip here. Let's just drill out the holes before it's mounted to the chassis, and we'll grab our little hinge pin bag here. So this is a set that I have available also. So let's tip all those out. So all the hinge pins you'll need, plus all those everyone's favourite, the circlip, the E clip or the C clip or the circlip, whatever you call it. These little happy chappies. And yes, we've all sent these flying across the room at some point or another. I like to think I'm pretty good at putting them on and off, and haven't lost too many over the years, or decades. But I'd be lying if I said I've never lost one. So we can have fun with those. So let's, doesn't matter which pin for now, we'll just grab one of these that we'll use. So out of the kit, the holes are way undersized, not even close for the hinge pins to go into them. So we'll grab our 1/8 of an inch drill bit. I'll leave that one there. So I usually find 1/8 drill bit will make the hole still not big enough, but it's a good first step. So in this bulkhead, we want the hinge pin to be like a firm fit, like an interference fit. So it won't sort of necessarily rotate and move in the bulkhead. Because it'll move in the arm instead. So to minimize the amount of play. So if we try it now, we'll still see it's kind of close, but there's no way that's going to go in. So there's next part takes a bit of time, so you've got to be patient. Which is using I usually use 2 reamers, so I use a 3mm reamer actually, so not metric size. So I use a 3mm reamer first, just to clean out the hole a little bit, and then the final step I'll use a 1/8 reamer. So it's the drill's 1/8, but the reamer's bigger, I guess. It's very accurate. The drill's probably or maybe my drill's worn, but it's a bit undersized. Whereas the 1/8 reamer will get you exactly 1/8. So I usually sort of balance between the two, depending on whether I want an interference fit or a free fit for each part. But it definitely takes a bit of time. So. The 3mm obviously goes in very easily from a 1/8 hole. I just use it to sort of clean up all the roughness of it, I guess. Start to get it towards a nice, accurate hole. Cool, so let's try first pass with the reamer, with the 1/8. So again, take your care and time on this. Not something that can be rushed. So that's one pass through, and that's pretty good, I reckon, because I can press that in, but there's quite a bit of resistance there, so it's going to hold it in place and it doesn't need to rotate. And then it's quite quite hard to get out, so I usually use shock pliers when you handle the hinge pins, of course, to not scratch them with the pliers. So that's pretty good. So I'll do the same for the other side. So you can see this is a lot easier to do before it's attached to the chassis. Might be a good update I can do to the manual. Cool. Goes through nicely. Beautiful. Okay, so 3/8 at the back, 5/16 at the front. 5/16, 3/8. Okay. Five sixteenths at the back. Yeah, you'll see here the front of this bulkhead's very thin. So I've got a little tip here as well if you're running the car. The front two screws, there's not much thickness of the material for it to go through there. So I'll put these 3/8 at the back. Knit them up, of course. Yeah, so these short at 5/16 at the front. They're exact replica, and the thickness is the replica of the original, but they do tend to come a little bit loose if you're driving and racing. So a little tip is to put longer bolts in, probably 7/16 or 1/2 inch, and then put a nut on top. So you can put a nut on top of the extra thread that sticks out with the longer bolt, and it'll make it reliable for racing. Not quite replica, but depends what you want to go for. Cool. Okay, so that's on. So you got a little note there about using the longer bolts. Okay. Ooh, exciting bit. Over to the top deck. So let's crack open the top deck. We'll have to find where to put the Bizet stickers later on. Let's keep them over there for now. Okay, so first step, which you don't want to forget, is to put our little front body post onto the top deck, because you can't do this after the top deck is installed. I'll just clean up the edges. If needed, you can drill out the little hole in the side of it for your body pin as well to make sure the body pin fits. Should be about a 1.5mm hole for most standard body pins, or 1/10 scale body pins at least. So I need a little button. Quarter-inch button. Top deck has no countersinking, so it can go either way. It's all symmetrical. I'll use the shock pliers again to grab this little puppy so we don't damage him. Cool, so try and line it up with the hole going across ways. Okay, now install the top deck. Ensure the rear edges of the top deck slides under the bottom edge of the rear shock tower. So that's where we sanded the bottom edge of the rear shock tower before. So what's the best way? Best way is probably to slide the front section in between the tower there, and it'll go a bit too far, so that's good. So then you can drop the back down, and that should just slide beautifully like that under the rear tower. So we can see we've got quite a few holes, including the standoffs and the front bulkhead where we're going to screw this top deck down. So let's start putting some of those in. We'll not tighten them all fully until the end, so we can align everything. So we need some 3/8 at the back. So these are all button heads. So I've got a couple of not sockets. We've got our 3/8, couple of 3/8 button heads at the back. Same 3/8 button heads for the front bulkhead. The two at each side here that go into the standoffs, so 1/4 inch, which are the shorter ones. So they're those guys. And then let's grab our little standoffs bag. So it's got our 2 standoffs and the hardware for them. So you'll see here we've got a couple of countersunk and a couple of buttons. So the buttons are the same 1/4 inch for the top, and then the little baby 5/16 for the bottom. You can use a bit of Loctite, especially the bottom ones, because it's metal to metal. Any medium strength Loctite is good. You could even use the Tamiya AG stuff, or whatever Loctite from the hardware store. Not whatever. Use the medium strength Loctite from the hardware store. So nut lock screw lock is the weak one. Nut lock is the sort of medium, which I always use, and then stud lock is the really strong one, which I would not recommend using for RC because you might never get the screw out again. I've got that one in there, and then a little bit more Loctite, and then we go to the other side. Make sure you pop it into the correct hole. Nip those up firmly. Use the shock pliers again on those to not scratch them. Cool, get our top deck back. Alright then, so we're going to put all these screws in and leave them all just a little bit loose. So get that under the rear tower, and then line up the hole. The head of this screw will probably rub a bit on the tower, so don't worry about that. And well, maybe that screw's a little bit too long. Let's swap that 3/8 screw out, and we'll actually use the shorter 1/4. That's I might update the manual for you guys on that one. They're a bit long, so the hole doesn't stick out the bottom there. So let's pop those back and use the 1/4. You could open the hole at the bottom if you wanted to and put the longer bolts in there. Of course, either way works. So put that in, so not fully tightened. Super careful of these ones into the rear standoff. Remember that's into plastic still. If you got the alloy ones, then you would use the a little bit of Loctite as well if you do use the no-coast alloy type. And you could obviously nip those up a bit firmer. Okay. Get that aligned. Okay, they're all just not quite tight. Into the top of the post. Again, you could put the weak Loctite on these if you wanted to. I find they don't really come loose though. But just put those in just loose. And then the fronts lines up perfectly. So that's where use the longer 3/8 buttons in the front, because you've got plenty of material for these to go into, but into the plastic bulkhead. So do not over tighten. Okay, nice. So it's all a little bit loose. Remember we left the rear bulkhead bolts underneath the chassis a bit loose as well. So this is where it kind of all aligns itself, and you can gradually screw it all up. Cool. So yeah, sitting on a flat surface is obviously good for this, and just gently press down. I don't know if there's an order to it, but might nip up those two standoff posts first, and then work our way back. So very carefully on the rear standoffs. Rear bulkhead. We'll do the underside of the bulkhead screws last. So I'll do these top ones first. It's all nipped up nicely, and then pressing down, not super hard, but just a bit of pressure, make sure the whole thing's sitting flat, and just do the final nip up of those. So that's the whole top deck, and then we'll go back to the underside screws, the Phillips, and just nip those back up again. Remember, apply good pressure, good downward pressure into them on the screwdriver, so you don't skip and strip the heads. Awesome. Cool. That's done. Looks like the picture. Beautiful. Okay, battery strap. So I've got a bunch of information here about options you can do. As I was saying earlier in the show, we've got 2 different lengths. So I've got our 2 different pseudo replica battery straps here. So we've gone for the longer length, so I'll put that shorter one aside and we'll go for the longer one. You'll see in these they've got 2 different types of holes at each end. So one end has large round holes and the other end has smaller, slightly slotted hole. So the smaller slotted holes go at the back, and then the larger holes at the front. They're kind of designed for the original associated 3/8 socket bolts, where they had like a little tiny hole through the head of the bolt for your body pin. So if you can source or you have some of those left over from decades back, you can use those 2 in the front positions, and then just normal bolts in the back without the hole. So if you're lucky enough to still have some of them. I think I used to have a couple somewhere, but that was about it. So we'll just use normal 3/8 sockets for this. So I've got a few there. What else does it say? So leave them slightly loose at the back in particular, so that you can sort of move and manipulate this battery strap. As you sort of lift it up, it can just slightly tilt a bit easier, and that lets you slide the battery in and out from the front. And then the front, it's up to you with your build what you want to do. I usually just do it the hard way and put one of these screws with a washer. So I've got to unscrew them each time I want to take the battery out, but it only takes a few extra seconds. If you find the bolts, or if you've got the equipment to drill a very small hole in the head, then go for it. I'll be massively impressed. I do not have the equipment or skills to do that. Cool. So so I'll put those down, leave a bit of play so you can see the slot in those. Allows it to just sort of move slightly from side to side, which you'll need to manipulate the front of the holes to get them over the bolts. I'll just put these in here for now. As I said, for racing I put a couple of washers on these so it holds the front of the strap down. Yeah, so you don't have to screw them right down, just so it's loose. So yes, the idea is, if you had a pin or if you had a washer, you got to take the bolt out. But if you had a pin, you just take the 2 pins out, like body pins, and then you can the hole's big enough to pop over the head of the bolt, so you can manipulate it slightly side to side, pop it over the bolt, and then it lifts up. And then, because it's a bendy material, you can just loosen off the rear bolts as much as you need, so that then you can manipulate the battery to lift it up at the front and slide it out, and pop the new one in. So so that's the battery insertion. So not the most convenient, but that's the way Masaki had it, and that's the replica style. So I've got the long one as mentioned, which means I can put some, you can do a couple of things. You can have a shorty pack with the ESC in the back underneath if you have a small ESC, or you can just have padding front and back of the battery, and have a shorty battery, and you can move it forward and aft for weight distribution for different handling characteristics. For me, I use the shorty pack, generally have it in the middle, maybe slightly back or slightly forward depending on the track condition. If it's a bit slipperier, then move it back 10 mil, 20 mil, and vice versa. For higher grip, you can move it forward. The track will still give you the rear bite that you need, and the weight forward helps you be able to turn more and keep the nose from lifting off the ground. Cool. So then we have this little weird plate. So yeah, again, Masaki fashioned a little plate that sticks on top of the top deck and holds the ESC. So again, it's sort of up to you in terms of making a replica build versus a more functional build. Back then he had the ESC up high on this plate, so it's set up on top of the plate, and that was double-sided taped on. So you can have it there for a bit of a scale look if you want. You could put your speedy on it if you want to, or you could put your speedy down on the side if you want to lower center of gravity or balance the car left to right. I often run with a small stock spec speedy to run 21.5 class. I'll usually have it on the left hand side, so down here, and then have the receiver and transponder on the other side on the right. So yeah, that's up to you for how you want to build and lay out the electronics and the weight distribution depending on your purpose. So yeah, so you use a bit of double-sided tape on this. Instructions sort of show how it was done to make an exact replica. So I'll probably leave this piece off for now, but that is there to use as desired. Okay, now over to the rear suspension. So I'll just set this aside for a moment, and we can look at the rear mounts and suspension arms. So I think some of the really early kits, there was a bit of extra space in some of the earlier kits where you could shim it in between the arm and the mount if needed. For these later parts, you don't really need to do that. They're meant to be a nice sort of accurate fit, a little bit of sanding, and you don't need any shims, but we do need to drill them out. So let's have more fun with the drill. And there's tips here about driller mounts for interference fit. So these mounts, we want the hinge pin to be tight, and then for the arms we want the hinge pin to move freely in the arm. So we do the same sort of technique again. Let's drill the fronts while we're about it. This is all with the 1/8 drill bit, of course. all the hinge pins are 1/8. Okay, so we'll clean those up later, but let's clean up the mounts. Won't need much sanding. I usually just sand the bottom surface of them so they seat nice and flush on the chassis. And if there's any little corner artifacts sticking out, you can just clean them off pretty easily. But yeah, like a bit of a sand on something firm board, so you get a nice flat surface. They'll seat nicely on the chassis. Those guys already. We'll double check it later, but you'll see that there's a very specific orientation that the mounts go. There's a scallop out of the top, so make sure the scallop is at the top of the part when you attach it. So that's for the diff out drive to clear. And then there's also like a wedge shape, so they're shorter at one end than the other. And the angle of the hole for the hinge pin is angled at 3 degrees, so it gives you the 3 degrees anti-squat. So make sure you got the lower, thinner ends at the back and the thicker end at the front, so that the angle of the hinge pin is lower at the back and higher at the front. So we'll double check those. And also another thing which is it's the exact opposite of a production RC10 kit, is that these mounts effectively position the hinge pin inside the bolt holes. So all the production RC10s, this sort of a mount looks kind of similar, but obviously it's a bit different shape. The screw holes will be on the chassis, and the hinge pin actually mounts outside of the screw holes, so it sticks out further. So this car is the exact opposite. The hinge pin is on the inside of the holes, and also the curve shape on these. If we can see that there, you can see you got the sharp corner on this side, and then the curved corner on this side. So make sure that curved corner lines up with the shape of the chassis as well when you install it. So as a double check. So the sort of curved part to the outside, flat sharp part to the inside towards the gearbox, and you'll see that it matches the profile of the carbon chassis for those nice rounded corners on the outside. So that's something to keep an eye out for. It's very sort of unintuitive if you've built lots of production RC10s. It's the opposite. So the arms, you'll see the bottom sort of back edge on the bottom. Some of the sort of back edges of the arm are quite rough from the printing. They're all like the lower edges of the way it was printed. So I always like to skim them off with a scalpel and then tidy it all up with the sandpaper. So you can do this to whatever way you desire. Here's how I do it. You see the sort of inside edges as well a bit. Some little bits stick out a bit, so you can just trim that off. You can always sand this later, so it doesn't have to be too perfect. Just want to get all the sort of rough sections you can feel with your finger. inside edge as well there. Sort of, if you want to be really pedantic, you can tidy that up. And obviously be really careful with scalpels and such, doing this sort of stuff. Always make sure you have the blade under control and cutting away from you in general. Cool, so that's cleaned up, same again. Cool, so that's the scalpel trimming, and then finish it with sandpaper. I use about 240 grit sandpaper for this. I find you don't really need to go a second layer, like a second pass with finer. For some reason this PC blend material just sands really nicely with about 240. You can of course sand as desired, but I usually just do one pass with the 240 and that cleans it up nicely. If it was the one-off display model and you want it to be 1000% perfect, you do a bit more sanding and go a bit finer on the second pass. I'm not a sanding expert, so you would do as desired. But yeah, just do the basics to take off all the edges and make sure you got the smooth surfaces for where the pivoting parts will be. We can always fix them up a bit later as well as we fit the arms and the mounts into the chassis. Just make sure there's clearance. Sometimes the back of the arm, we've got to make sure clears the carbon. That's kind of a close fit there, so that's something to check as you fit it or after you fit it. But for now we just make it look nice. Some of these top bits have pretty sharp little edges. Some of it's to replicate the way that Masaki would have dremeled or cut or milled out the original arms to get clearances for the driveline for the axles. But so I've kind of designed that into the part to make it look like the already modified part from the original to make it replica. So you can just sand off some of those edges so you don't jab yourself later on. I try and round off all the edges around where the arm's going to pivot on the mount, to make sure you get super smooth, free suspension movement. But again, it's a bit of old school sort of process of sanding and trimming and to make sure that the parts fit nicely and move as needed. Cool, beautiful. There's one. Yeah, it's so nice, the stuff, when you sand it. Comes up really good. And I think with the colour as well, it's pretty much masks all the printing lines. So normally on the printed part, you can see the lines if you look really closely, which some people don't like, some people don't care. But on these parts, for whatever reason, with the colour and the type of material, and once you sand it, it's you pretty much can't see the lines, which looks really cool. That actual fully bottom edge where it's lowest point of the print is usually pretty rough, so give that a bit extra. Beautiful. Okay, all over again. Take those sharp edges off first so I don't stab myself. A few little errant bits of printing material stuck on there, so get rid of those. Just extra tiny bits of plastic that's sort of not part of the actual print, but they've just stuck on the outside. Okay, let's start to assemble. So out of all of the hinge pins, the rear arms use the longest ones, which are 50, what are they? 51? 50. 51 millimeter, measured to the inner edges of the slots for the E-clips. 51 millimeters, so they're the longest pair. The second longest pair goes in the front arms, which are 40, and then you've got some various others like 29 is for the outer and the rear arms. What are those? 26 is the outer and the front arms. And then you've got the smallest of the little kingpins, 22. So they're the front steering kingpins. But yeah, so we get the longest for the rear suspension. Now we've sized the hole in the mounts so that it's pretty firm fit. Probably a fraction too firm there, but that's alright. Better than being too loose. Oh, that one's a bit too tight. Let's open that one out a fraction. So I'll just use the 3mm reamer there, not the 1/8, just to be a bit on the conservative side. You'll still feel a bit of resistance there in this nylon material. So these mounts, the front bulkhead that we put on earlier, and the gearbox casing as well, they're all made with, or they're all printed with the nylon. So it's glass fiber reinforced nylon, and the main purpose of that was to replicate the look and feel of, well, basically the look, I'm not sure about the feel, of the original, which was hand machined out of nylon, I believe, back then in '89. So yeah, it looks not exactly the same, but it's kind of similar, but it still has good flex and good strength characteristics. Not quite as strong as the polycarbonate, but still good for the application that they're being used for. So first thing we need to check is that we haven't got any binding, or it doesn't jam when we put the mount in between the arm. So there needs to be a tiny bit of play there, so that's good. And then here, so because we've just drilled these out, that's a very tight fit at the moment. So here's where we need to carefully let's put the 3mm through. It should be pretty much do not much. So we'll just clean up the holes with the 3mm as the interim step. But then we want to be very careful with the 1/8, and probably just one pass is enough. It'll just should make it free, but not too loose. So I'll just carefully go through sort of once. Okay, so that's once through all the holes. Let's check. So that is pretty good, but they don't quite line up, so I need to Need to get a bit agricultural here and try and widen the holes a little bit, but something I probably should have mentioned before. When you drill it, you try and get the holes to line up, which I didn't do properly. So like when you go through the drill, if you can go right through both at the same time, like have the drill bit sticking out a bit so you can go through both. That helps to align them. So that helps to align them. And you can very carefully wiggle around a little bit on the drill, but definitely don't put much pressure because that'll break the drill pretty quick if you twist it. So just let it cut and just wiggle it slightly. Probably not recommended, but I got away with it. So yeah, so you can see here that you can push it through, but then it tightens up if they're not perfectly aligned. So we just need to keep elongating the hole, or widening out the hole a little bit in the right direction, so that the pin goes right through and lines up and still lets the arm fall through. So if we just have it on one, yeah, it's like swings free, that's good, but it doesn't line up with the second one perfectly. So I might use the 3mm and just work in the direction where it needs to be. Slightly angled. Almost there. That one's pretty straight. Oh yeah, there we go, that's good. So it goes through nicely with both of them, and you can see it'll just swing free, so that's free enough. Perfect for that one. Oh, this one's pretty close. It doesn't quite swing free, so I'll just run the 3mm through both of them. Clean up sort of the edges fraction. Yep, that feels good now. So it's swings free. Now we can put the mounts in. So remember here we've got the front of the arm. Front of the arm has the shock hole mounts. That goes towards the front, and then the thick end of the actual mount goes towards that front, and the curved corners goes outwards towards the arm. So now we'll have it push right through. So now if we grab the mount, the arm should swing free. That's not too bad. I'd probably run that so the arm falls basically. It'll free up a fraction after a run or two anyway, but yeah, that falls nicely, so happy with that. And now favourite bit, everybody's favourite bit, we'll put the circlips on. So just make sure you got the circlip under control. So I'm sort of like just got the fingers to hold it either side, line it up with the slot and the hinge pin across, and then use the pointy nose pliers to either clip it in or send it flying across the room. Okay, other end, same thing. Just make sure you got your fingers sort of keeping the clip under control. That usually stops it escaping. And then just clip it in, quite easy. let's do the next one. So again, make sure you got everything lined up. So I've got the front, so front of the arm with the shock mounts, curved, can't see that, curved side of the mount towards the arm, towards the outside, and the thicker end at the front. So if you can see, I might not be able to see that this is the thick end, thin end, front of the arm, and then press the hinge pin in. So obviously it'll be pretty hard to push in through the mount, which is what we want. And then you just need to line it up so you got the equal amount sticking out. So we can pop the C-clips on. I think I have one here somewhere. There's one, and there's another one. There we go. Pinch it in the fingers, and clip it in. Pinch it in the fingers. There we go. Got that lined up. There we go. Clip it in. Cool. So you double check everything's right. So front of the arm, and make sure you got those the right way around. Cool. It's looking good. Oh, drink break. Okay, ensure a smooth free movement of arms. We have done that. Now we'll mount to the chassis, so pretty straightforward, except we just probably need to slightly sand or Dremel either the arm or the chassis on the back edge. It's a bit of a close tolerance. So that looks pretty good. Might be okay actually. We can screw them in and let's see how it goes. So again, these use the Phillips, half-inch Phillips. There's 4 of them. So 4 of these half-inch Phillips head screws. Cool. And then obviously make sure you got the right arm on the right side. So the part with the shock mounts towards the front. So we need to get these started. So again, I like press down from the top because they'll need a little bit of pressure to get them started. First couple of threads. These screws are actually steel. They're not the aluminium, or the ones I provide are steel. They're not the aluminium ones that used to come with the RC10 kits. So they are a little bit stronger and they don't strip the heads as easy as those originals, but still always be careful. Yeah, so we'll just check this one. Let's see. Yeah, movement's pretty good. Yep, no issue there. Beautiful. So I can see they fall without resistance. So that's all we need. Okay, nip those up nice and tight. Remember it's plastic, but especially the first time it does sort of compress this nylon material a bit. So I would probably recommend like later on, so even that one's like takes a little bit more. Yeah, sort of like later on after you finish the build or before you run it, so double check these, make sure that they're fully nipped up. So no excess force, of course, but make sure they're not loose. Yep. So now we've got nice free. Oh, that one's not so good. That one's good. This one, not perfectly free. It's not too bad. I mean, you could try and fix that, like it's not falling, which is not ideal. It's probably not going to compress that much anyway. Probably maximum is about there. So I probably wouldn't worry about that too much. That'll free up after a first run. If you want to be super pedantic, you can take it off and do a little bit more sanding. But yeah, that's pretty good. So it's only when it's up a bit more. Yep, I'll chicken out of that one. Okay, back to the front. So front arms on the front. What have we got here? So same thing with the holes. We've got this extra brace on the front. Otherwise, same again. Cool. So let's clean up these arms a bit. There's that fully bottom edge of the print. It's always the roughest part. So remember, boys and girls and grown men, always be super careful when using your scalpel. You definitely don't want any of you chopping yourself doing this stuff. Always cut away and try and keep control of the blade, so even if it does slip, it's under control, it won't slip far, or if it does, it's always away from you. Not going to chop your fingers or anything. Okay. It's pretty good. You can see on the top of these front arms as well, where the shock goes in. I've kind of designed in the dremeling that Masaki did on the original arms. So he obviously dremeled out some of the material here to make sure that there was clearance in terms of the geometry and the long shocks and the extra droop, etc., that they achieved with this world's prototype. So I've kind of replicated the post-dremeling shape into this arm, so it's all done for you, to try and make it a little extra touch to make it look like the original. I hope you guys have had a bit of time to get a cup of coffee or a drink or bathroom. We'll finish up this sanding and then we'll get stuck back into the next step of assembly. One particular bit here to look out for is the gap between these arm and where the mount is. I made the tolerance sort of a little bit tight here, just so you can, just to allow for the printing differences, especially the two material differences. So we can sand as needed to make sure that it's not binding. I'll show you that in a minute. Okay. So, first thing we need to check here is the gap. So if we look at sort of from the top, we need to make sure that the arm is not going to bind. It's pretty close. It sort of goes on, but it's touching. The other side, that's a bit tighter. That's definitely binding there. We'll just sand the inner surface of the arm there so it has a bit more clearance. To sand it flat. It's getting close, so it's definitely not tight anymore. We'll probably fit the hinge pin next, just to, when it all aligns with the hinge pin, it's usually a little bit tighter. But we'll check that first and not go too far. pretty good. Yeah, so we get our next longest hinge pins, which is the 40. So if you measure from slot to slot, that'll be 40 mil. Needs to be reamed out. So we'll grab our 3 mil just to clean up the edges first, in case I haven't already done that. That's pretty much free. So now we get our 1/8 and do it carefully. I'll do the outside while we're about it for future. Not too bad. Not free, but it's getting there. See if they line up. Yep, awesome. So that swings. That lines up. This one's a bit out. Oh, awesome, that swings. Okay. So we should be ready to assemble now. So remember, we've got this little brace to put on. So I find we'll probably fit it all first, but then you'd put the clips into the pin first and slide it through the brace, etc. But let's do a dry fit, because it's probably need a bit more sanding to make it nice and free. Yeah, so I can see that's like way too tight. So I'll probably give it a bit more of a sand to open the gap up. and yeah, because when it goes through the angle, it's probably like slightly binding on the bulkhead. Try the same on this side. Yeah, it's about the same. So slides in, but there's too much friction. I'll try and square these off a bit as I sand it. It's usually just one or two little areas that are rubbing as it rotates. So the squarer, flatter it is, the better. Sometimes it's just right in the corners as well, which will just rub, especially at the full deflection angle where the arm's going to move, like fully up or fully down in the suspension arc. Okay, let's try that again. Oh, there we go. Yep, so that's pretty much falling. I think the rest of that will be perfect after a run. So that side's done. Probably needs the same thing on this side. Beautiful. Okay, now let's we'll clip a circlip on first. So line it up, pinch it with your fingers, and then get the pliers in the right spot, and just pop it on. So yeah, so we'll put put this through first so it's set up like that. We'll do that for both of them. And we'll slide it in from the front and then put the final two circlips on from the back, which is a little bit fiddly, but probably the best way to do it. Fully on, so pop it through. So now you need to get everything lined up doing it this way, or you can do one at a time actually, it's probably a bit easier. So we'll just put the pin through the brace at the front and then through one arm, and we'll get that lined up. Make sure the brace is over the top of the chassis here, not sort of falling underneath as you line up the first hinge pin. So push that all the way through. We'll pop this on later. Cool, and then the other side, same thing. Through the brace, through the arm, through the mounts, and right through. And then they'll stick out the back, and we can attack it to pop the circlips on the back. Okay, what angle? So here's where it's a bit trickier, but we can sort of grab it there with our fingers, so we can steady it while it goes on. Easy. You can shim this as well if you want to sort of put shims on the front and the back. A little tip for if you're racing or driving it. The back ones you can't do too much about. They can pop off quite easily. You can put shims sort of in between the circlip and the brace, so in between the brace and the front of the arm, and also at the back if desired, so you can shim that out. The back ones can get knocked off as the car bottoms out. They will disappear eventually. But one little thing I do sometimes is get a little bit of epoxy, like 2-part epoxy, mix it up, and put a tiny drop on the sort of top of the out of the car. So you put the circlip onto the hinge pin, and put a tiny little bit of epoxy on top, and just have it sit them vertically somewhere while it sets, like 5-minute epoxy, and that will then stop at least that front circlip from coming off. And then it's always sort of being pushed back, and gravity's kind of pushing it down, so even if the clip comes off the back, it's not likely to come out during a race anyway. But yeah, you can sort of shim it up there as desired as well. So yeah, a couple of little tips there. Okay, front suspension and rear suspension is on. Well, arms. Can't really say suspension yet. Front arms. And next is the gearbox.